wanted to make a small video about my CP16R camera. Now I'm going to sell this later this year. I have too many cameras and not enough time to shoot with them, so selling the extra ones. It looks from the outside pretty much like the stock camera. It has the viewfinder, reflex viewfinder, and this one has the pretty rare relay optics for video tap system. I don't know how rare this is, but I have seen very few one of these, so I think it's not that common. So there's the lens mount and video optics. It's pretty much look like the same preset too. It has the filter holders which go to the gate. Actually, you can install gelatin filters. Difficult to see here, but the slot is there. Slots. Yeah. So you can install small pieces of gelatin filter here and insert it to the slot. So it's behind the mirror shooter and directly in front of the film, so it doesn't dim the viewfinder, but you cannot filters here. If there is dust on the filter, it shows very clearly on the film. This is quite handy if you have very bright conditions and it's some windy and you can barely see through the viewfinder, so you don't want to dim the viewfinder. Just movement and film artist. Yeah. So this one has my pretty rare single speed crystal zinc update kit. I made 3 of these back in 2022. Sold 2 of them, and this is the 3rd one. I was going to make more of them, but people were complaining about why it doesn't have shutter parking, why it doesn't have footage counter, and why it doesn't have more speeds than 1. And I was going to make a system which was affordable and easy to install and simple and reliable, so this was perfect system for that, but people didn't like it because it didn't have extra speeds and shutter parking. This single speed system has the manual inching button. You can install, this is the UI installable system, like my other CP16R class, so you can install more of these buttons if needed, but I installed this under the lens mount. So here's the manual inching button. You can adjust the speed if you open the side cover of the camera. And here's the start stop button, and you can push, if you need to park the mirror, you can just push this shortly until you see that the mirror is parked correctly. When looking through the viewfinder, you will learn it like in 2 minutes or couple of tries, and it starts to work. So you don't basically need dedicated mirror parking with this camera, but people didn't like it that it wasn't automatic, so that was one of the reasons why this didn't become popular. I actually made like 5 or 8 of these kits, almost finished but not completely, because people didn't order this, so I scrapped the whole manufacturing batch actually, and now I only have this one which is installed here now, and then the two ones which are on the other side of the world it says out there to one user. So this is pretty rare. And I'm actually going to take this off of the camera before I'm selling it, because what I'm working on now is the 45 speed system. So it has this 7-segment display, you can select the speed, 45 speed options, and it does have shutter parking, automatic shutter parking. So it's about double the price than this system was, but it has most of the functions which people asked for. It doesn't have the footage counter, because all these cameras have, it's difficult to see it in this light, but this is mechanical footage counter. You can just use this. There is no footage counter on the magazines, but you can basically just use this mechanical counter, and you don't need separate electronic counter. So I still save some money on the price of this, because leaving the counter off. But it does have all the speeds you can possibly need and the shutter parking. I can show you first how this single speed worked, and then opening the side cover here and showing what's inside when the single speed is installed. So the single speed had this one 2-pin connector for external power, and because one installed this by themselves, they got through the onboard battery power to the circuit board and have dual power option, so you could hot swap the battery if you had external power connected here, or just use this, or just the extra onboard battery. And it had this switch, which I just had here, so it has the internal crystal sync and external sync. In external mode, it took the sync reference from this connector, and then it has the start, stop and engine buttons. So if engine, then just push this, and you could adjust this engine speed if needed. There was a small potentiometer on the circuit board, and then starting, pushing this briefly, releasing, it starts, pushing another time it stops. Let's see if we can see the viewfinder image here. Now you can see it's partially parked. Now I'm pushing the engine button briefly, so you can, let's see here, yeah, now it's parked, now it's not parked, shutter is open, now it's half done. So if you saw that the mirror is halfway or shutter is open, you should just push this briefly, and you can see it moves the mechanism just enough that it kind of parks it correctly. Because you can't open this door all the time. Normally it stays open, stays closed, sorry. Normally it's always closed, and you just can't open it all the time manually. it here, so you need some kind of button for that. You can see I set this pretty well. There's some thermometer tape I forgot there. Taking it out now. Yeah. But nice spark. So this is why I complain that people don't need the automatic parking, because it's so easy to park it with this. You will learn this while like trying it 3 times and it works. But the new system will. Wrong button. New system will have the automatic mode. This single speed system wasn't absolutely stable. It can hear here. It was pretty good for sync because it was designed to give the long-term sync rather than the absolute speed. Absolute speeds can go a little bit back and forth, but it was designed to keep the long-term sync. Perfect. So it worked. If looking to magazines, this is scratch film, so we can do that. These are really simple. And you can actually use Mitchell magazines if you just have small adapter pin which screws on the bottom, so it can lock the magazine here. So you can use those Mickey Mouse magazines with these if you want. Those are simple too. And these are beautiful because these are separate doors on feed and take up. And they have their own light seals. So you can just add the film there. I actually like to load these the way that I first load the film here in dark, then just threading it on the take up in light, but then installing the magazine in the camera and then installing the feed side film pad. Film first here, then tightening this. So I will keep the door open or halfway latch, like the top latch, closed when threading the film and then tightening this. And then I can, when it's fully loaded here, I can actually run the camera or manually hinge it a little bit and make sure that this spools correctly before closing this take up. And then when taking the film magazine out of the camera, when the roll has been fully exposed, I will just take it out and open this in darkness and take the roll out. But when loading, you actually only need to put the film roll here and thread it through the magazine throat, and then you can do the rest in like including putting the film into the take-up. So it's pretty simple. It doesn't have exactly the simplest film pad, but this is still pretty easy to load. Yeah. I'm taking power off for a moment, and then going to open this side cover and show you what's inside this. So I took the side cover off and yeah, that light is better. So you can see that the original circuit board of these cameras is around here. It covers most of the mechanics. But this single speed system, I designed it so that it is actually mounted on mostly on the back panel, and there's the power distribution board on the bottom of the camera. And then there's new tachometer sensor here. So nothing is in front of this mechanics, so it's much easier to service the camera because there's nothing here. The new 45 speed system, this one, will need so much components that I need to make a board which is approximately this size, so that this one doesn't have this board here, and here is only the display, small board with the display itself, this and nothing else, and almost everything is on the main board here. And you can see here is the shutter sensor. You can barely see it. There's a small blade which cuts the light to the shutter sensor, and that's how it knows where is the correct stopping position for the shutter. So because the 45 speed system has the big board here, I can include the shutter sensor on the same board. With this single speed system, because the main board is smaller and it's mounted here, I would have needed third board and lots of CNC machine parts to reach here to include a separate shutter sensor and more electronics and more software functions to make it work. The single speed, this is the potentiometer which is used to adjust the inching speed. This is the inching speed which is set now. You can adjust this, the potentiometer. And this is not sync, but it is relatively stable, so you could basically shoot some kind of time lapse with this if needed, if setting it very low. And here's the friction adjustment for the magazine take-up. It's not on the magazines. Magazines basically only have the spindles where the spools go. And all the adjustments are in the camera body. So here is the friction adjustment for the magazine. And the motor and this encoder, this are fully original. So both this single speed system and the new 45 speed are supposed to use the original motor and original encoder disc, because it will cost much more to make new ones, especially the motor, because this is very oddly sized small motor, and the encoder disc system has the belt drive integrated, so it would be rather difficult to make for cheap. So I decided on the new system too, I will use the original motor and original encoder, just for the reason that it will make it a little bit cheaper, maybe $300-400 or so, because this camera is not high-end camera, it's a kind of middle ground camera. And if you would like to spend like 3K or 4K or more on CP16R, you could probably get a better camera for that price. So you can make a crystal update which costs $2,000, for example. No one would need it and no one would buy it because they would get much better camera then. So all the CP16R systems need to be really good price performance ratio. So this is pretty much optimized for, this is $750 including shipping, and this was something like 400 or I think I sold the two kits for 700 or something like that. So this was half the price of this. And if making it super cool features like OLED displays and tons of meters and software functions and new motor and so on, it would cost like $1,500 to $2,000 for the update kit, which doesn't make sense with the CP16R. So this did make sense and this does make sense because this is well over 1K. It was 7. I'm collecting orders right now, so this can be ordered right now, but this is $750 for one, and I think I sold 2 pieces for $1,200. So you will get this guy if ordering more than one. But this new system has the big main board and these separate boards are left out, so it is kind of simpler to install maybe, but it is not as easy to service to mechanics. It's easier to service them than with the original electronics of these cameras, but not as easy as with the single speed because this was specifically made to have all the electronics on the side so that nothing obstructs the mechanics. And you can service these freely and you can take the main gear out without taking any electronics out and so on. Only removing this belt and this grounding wires and then taking this beam out, the bearing out, this belt out and then pulling the main wheel. This I'm going to, because I'm not shooting with this camera at the moment. Anyway, and I'm making the new 45 speed kit, so I'm taking this single speed electronics out, except this sensor, because I'm saving the cost by using the same sensor with the new 45 speed kit, because this sensor is really good. I could make a new design, but it wouldn't make sense because I already have a good sensor for this. So I'm keeping the old sensor but taking this board out and this board out and the single speed front panel out, and I'm leaving these buttons for now, but probably I will just route the new heatsink and stop to these buttons. And as you can see, the new old system now, 2 pin power connector and separate external accessory connector for additional start-stop switches and external speed in and so on. On the new system I decided to have everything on the same connector. It actually doesn't have the external speed in because it is not needed with this system. Because it has all the speed switch which the camera can mechanically handle, so you don't need to feed the external speeds to this. But you can connect the external power like this old one, and then starts off switches, and you can get 1 pulse per frame output for external footage counters if you want to use things like that. And you can just make a footage counter out of Arduino or ask me to make a counter if you need one. And then there's one external output which I haven't decided yet what it does, but I'm going to send these panels to manufacturing next week and finishing the main board later this month, so I can actually decide before summer what the one external output is, but it's there anyway. So now I'm taking everything out which is not needed, basically leaving the switches and this sensor and not other electronics go off the camera, then testing if I have correct dimensions on this panel before sending it to manufacturer. And this soap panel was fiberglass composite, kind of similar stuff than circuit boards, and it's kind of elastic, so it is durable, but you have to be careful with the light seal when installing this. This new panel will be made out of aluminium, so it is kind of easier to install. This will probably be black panel with silver markings like most of my other devices. This old panel was, this is greenish tan, I think, and with gold markings, so it looks pretty cool, but this cannot be done out of aluminium, so it was fiberglass. This new one will be aluminium. It took about 4 or 5 minutes to take out, so you can see here go to start, stop and inching button wires, and there's 2 wires for the motor and encoder sensor just add. It has 2 power wires and 1 for the signal, and there's 1 extra wire to take power out of the board. This actually has its own power regulator because it is designed to work even with the old CP16R systems, or if someone would want to design their own system, they could buy just the sensor from me and make the rest by themselves. No one has done that, but I would have sold the bare sensors to them if they wanted, and they could have made the rest of the system by themselves. So this is pretty versatile sensor system. I wanted to keep it on the new system too, to 45 speed. So here is the removed single speed system. There's the power distribution board. Here and power. It has the motor, drive electronics and dual power input. And here is the single speed system. Most of the electronics are on the other side. So one of the microcontrollers is here. Then where is the red? Pretty difficult to see, but there's the deep switch to select the internal speed and other settings. And then the potentiometer to set the inching speed. So this was pretty cool system and pretty easy to install, but people wanted more features and the higher price of the new 45 speed didn't matter, so I basically have no use for this, but I'm probably keeping it as souvenir or something. Trophy maybe. It's pretty cool anyway. So if taking the 45 speed it mounts here. I will just check the dimensions of the panel, then I have to get a batch of the panels made and getting it then back, then reset, checking that they work, and if not then making new ones. But let's see if it mounts here. And it's even easier to install because the single head power connection. This, I don't have the circuit board here yet. I have those boards made already, but didn't take it here. It only has the display board here and then the switches and connector. Everything goes to the main board, which is mounted here. 45 speed, including the motor wires, also go to the main board. And wires from this sensor board.